He did not sound certain they stopped in Oregon City at 2 a.m. at a truck stop that Marcus knew had stopped at hundreds of times. In fact, a reliable place with decent food, and a mechanic on call who had once helped him change a rear tire at 3 a.m. without complaint. He backed into a space and walked back to Webb's truck and knocked on the door. Webb opened it. He looked fine, tired, alert, fine. No wrong proportions, no missing face, no borrowed expression. Just a tired young driver who had been on the road for 8 hours and had passed through, fog with faces in it. "Can I look at your cargo?" Marcus said. Webb hesitated. "Seals are intact. I'm not asking you to break them. I want to look at the outside of the containers." They walked to the back of Webb's trailer together. Marcus shone his flashlight over the container surfaces, working slowly, checking each one carefully. On the third container, third from the left, second from the top, a mark, the circle and line, in the same dark substance as before, precise, deliberate, not a scratch or a scuff. One mark, just beginning. Marcus checked his own containers. He walked to the back of his own trailer and opened the flashlight on the surfaces. All 4 of his containers had the mark. All 4, covering the full surface, not spreading, not the dense wallpaper pattern of the Part 1 photograph, but present and consistent, as though established. His cargo was marked. Webb's was just beginning to be. "What does it mean?" Webb said, looking at the mark on his container. Marcus thought about the best way to explain 19 years. 2 journeys, 11 faceless figures, a ghost town, a 130-year-old ledger, and a brass key to a 23-year-old who had been driving for 8 months and needed the money. "It means you're on the road now," he said. "Properly on it. There are things I need to tell you. We should get coffee." He told Webb everything. He sat across from him in a booth at the back of the truck stop diner, with coffee between them and the particular privacy of 2 a.m. in a place where the other customers were too tired or too focused on their own roads to listen. And he told him everything. He told it plainly, without embellishment, the way he would describe a mechanical problem or a weather event. "Here is what happened. Here is what I observed. Here is the sequence." Webb listened without interrupting. He was the kind of young man who, when confronted with information that contradicted everything he believed about how the world worked, went very still and very focused, the way some people do when they are genuinely trying to understand rather than trying to dismiss. Marcus respected that. When he finished, Webb was quiet for a moment. "The calendar," he said. "Can I see it?" Marcus put it on the table. Webb picked it up carefully, turned to the current month, read the annotations. He turned the pages slowly, reading each one, going forward and back. He was quiet while he read. "It mentions me," he said, looking up. "November 15th. It says I need to be found." "Yes. Someone wrote this knowing I would be on this road." "Yes." Webb set the calendar down. "The man who called you, the one who told you about the Emmett Spur, who is he?" "I don't know. But he put the calendar in my truck. He's working against the operation, against Meridian Road Solutions, against whatever they are. Meridian, Alderman, whatever name they're using, it's the same operation. Different name, same cargo, same road. And the woman in Boise," Webb said, "the one who'll be at the warehouse. You've seen her twice before. Different women, different cities, but same ledger, same knowledge." Webb was quiet again. He looked at the calendar. "Why would they load me separately? If the cargo's the same, why not put it all in your truck?" It was a good question. Marcus had been circling it since Elko. "Because one truck would be monitored," he said slowly, working it out as he spoke. "They've been tracking me since Part 1. They know I opened the containers in Tucson. They know I didn't deliver. So they added a second carrier, one they could control, in case I did something unexpected again. I'm the backup." "You might be more than that." Marcus looked at the calendar. "The calendar says to find you before the third stop. Not just to warn you, to find you, which means whoever is writing this wants us together on this road." "2 drivers with the same cargo," Webb said. 2 carriers, both marked. What does that accomplish?" Marcus did not answer immediately because the answer forming in his mind was not comfortable. Two carriers, both on the same road, both carrying the marked cargo, both heading to the same destination. 2 points on a line, double the weight of whatever the road was moving, or a key and a lock. A combination. I think we need to make sure we arrive together, Marcus said. At Boise, same time, I think something happens at the warehouse that requires both of us to be there. The woman with the ledger, she'll know. She's always known more than she's told me. They paid for the coffee and went back to their trucks. The night was half gone. The last leg to Boise was 4 hours. Marcus had 4 hours to figure out what two marked. Carriers arriving together at a Boise warehouse in the dead of night actually meant. He opened the calendar as he started the engine. November 17th. The delivery day now read, 2 rivers become one at the Delta. The Delta is the warehouse. Bring Webb. The woman has waited for this for a very long time. The drive from Oregon City to Boise cuts east through the Columbia River Gorge and then south, through the high sage plains of eastern Oregon and into the Snake River Canyon, country of southwest Idaho, a route. Marcus had driven often, enough that he could recite the major landmarks in order, the exits and rest areas and the particular bridge where the highway crossed the river and the Idaho state line appeared as a highway sign rather than anything visible on the land. It was a good road. On a normal night, it was exactly the kind of long, familiar drive that reminded him why he had chosen this work. The road doing what roads were supposed to do, which was simply go forward 1 mile and then the next. This was not a normal night. The first sign that the road had different plans was the detour sign that appeared 20 miles east of Oregon City on I-84, not road work. The sign read, Bridge Closure, which was entirely plausible on this stretch, which had several river crossings and occasional maintenance closures. The detour arrow pointed north, onto a state route he knew, a good paved road, longer by 12 miles but entirely navigable. He followed it. Webb followed him. The state route ran north along the gorge for 8 miles before the second detour sign appeared. This one pointed west, back toward Portland, away from Boise, away from the direction they needed to go. He stopped and looked at it. The detour notation read, secondary route, continue east. He continued east. The state route curved and switched and delivered them. 40 minutes later, back to I-84, 7 miles past where they had left it. The bridge had apparently been fine. The detour had taken them on a circuit that ended where it began. 7 miles advanced for no discernible reason. He looked at the calendar. November 16th. Today, technically, it being after midnight. The annotation he had read earlier about the Emmett Spur in Oregon. Below it, in writing he had not seen before, the road tested the detour response. You passed. It will try something more direct next. He called Webb on the CB. You saw the detour. Followed you through it. Stay close. More direct came 20 miles later in the form of a truck that appeared in his rearview mirror, moving very fast, faster than it should have been, faster than a loaded truck could legally move on this grade, closing the gap between them in a way that made his hands tighten on the wheel. He watched it come. He checked his speed. He was doing 65. The truck behind him was doing 90 at least. Webb, he said on the CB. I see it, Webb said. It came out of nowhere. No lights until it was right behind me. The truck. He could see it clearly now in his mirror. A Kenworth dark, no identifying markings, closed to within 200 feet of Webb's trailer and held there. Not overtaking, not ramming, pacing. 200 feet exactly, steady. The woman has waited for this for a very long time. The drive from Oregon City to Boise cuts east through the Columbia River Gorge and then south, through the high sage plains of eastern Oregon and into the Snake River Canyon, country of southwest Idaho, a route. Marcus had driven often, enough that he could recite the major landmarks in order, the exits and rest areas and the particular bridge where the highway crossed the river and the Idaho state line appeared as a highway sign rather than anything visible on the land. It was a good road. On a normal night, it was exactly the kind of long, familiar drive that reminded him why he had chosen this work. The road doing what roads were supposed to do, which was simply go forward 1 mile and then the next. This was not a normal night. The first sign that the road had different plans was the detour sign that appeared 20 miles east of Oregon City on I-84. Not road work. The sign read bridge closure, which was entirely plausible on this stretch, which had several river crossings and occasional maintenance closures. The detour arrow pointed north, onto a state route he knew, a good paved road, longer by 12 miles but entirely navigable. He followed it. Webb followed him. The state route ran north along the gorge for 8 miles before the second detour sign appeared. This one pointed west, back toward Portland, away from Boise, away from the direction they needed to go. He stopped and looked at it. The detour notation read, secondary route, continue east. He continued east. The state route curved and switched and delivered them. 40 minutes later, back to I-84, 7 miles past where they had left it. The bridge had apparently been fine. The detour had taken them on a circuit that ended where it began, 7 miles advanced for no discernible reason. He looked at the calendar. November 16th. Today, technically, it being after midnight. The annotation he had read earlier about the Emmett Spur in Oregon. Below it, in writing he had not seen before, the road tested the detour response. You passed. It will try something more direct next. He called Webb on the CB. You saw the detour. Followed you through it. Stay close. More direct came 20 miles later in the form of a truck that appeared in his rearview mirror, moving very fast, faster than it should have been, faster than a loaded truck could legally move on this grade, closing the gap between them in a way that made his hands tighten on the wheel. He watched it come. He checked his speed. He was doing 65. The truck behind him was doing 90 at least. Webb, he said on the CB. I see it, Webb said. It came out of nowhere. No lights until it was right behind me. The truck, he could see it clearly now in his mirror. A Kenworth dark, no identifying markings, closed to within 200 feet of Webb's trailer and held there. Not overtaking, not ramming, pacing. 200 feet exactly, steady. Keep driving, Marcus said. Boise in an hour and a half. Right, Webb said. And then after a pause, Holt, my calendar. I don't have a calendar. I know. You've had one for 3 journeys. I haven't been given one. What does that mean? Marcus had been thinking about this since Oregon City. It means you're not the one they're worried about, he said. The calendar is given to the driver who might do something unexpected. The driver who needs to be managed or warned or redirected. He paused. You're new. They don't think you'll deviate. But you do. I always have, Marcus said. I just didn't know it until now. The canyon opened into the flat agricultural plain of Idaho's Treasure Valley, Boise, and its surrounding communities, spreading across the valley floor, the city lights visible from 30 miles out as a warm glow against the base of the dark mountains. Marcus had always liked this approach to Boise, the way the city appeared gradually, the way the valley accepted you out of the canyon country and offered flatness and light. It felt like a reward after the twisting mountain roads. Tonight it felt like an end point in a way it had never felt before. He had the warehouse address from the manifest. He had the calendar's notation, North Dock, 2 a.m., the woman will be there. It was currently 1:17 a.m., which gave him 43 minutes. He called Webb. I'm going to navigate us to the warehouse, he said. We go in together. You park your truck on the south side. I'll take the North Dock. I need you to stay in your cab until I signal you. If something happens, if the road does anything in the lot, anything at all, you drive straight out the exit and don't look back. Go to the nearest well-lit public place and call the police and tell them whatever you want to tell them. What are you going to do? Talk to the woman. Find out what 2 carriers means. And use the key. For what? I'll know when I'm there. He paused. Webb, after tonight, if everything is fine, If you make the delivery and get paid and get back on the road, watch for the calendar. If it appears in your truck, read every word of it. A long silence, and if it doesn't appear, Webb said. Then you're free, Marcus said. Not everyone gets marked permanently. Some drivers just pass through. He thought about that for a moment. I hope you're one of those. The warehouse was on Boise's North Industrial Fringe, identical in general character to every warehouse in every industrial district of every mid-sized American city. Utilitarian, efficient, unlovely. Chain-link fence with security lighting. 2 loading docks on the north side. The dock doors were closed, but the dock lights were on, which meant someone was expecting them. Marcus backed to the north dock at 1:58. Amiet Webb pulled around to the south side of the building as directed. The lot was empty. No other vehicles. He got out with the calendar under his arm and the key in his hand and walked to the dock door. It opened before he knocked. The woman was, as the calendar had promised, there. Not the same woman as Velum or Tucson. Different age, different face, dark hair to her shoulders, perhaps 45, dressed in the plain dark clothing that seemed to be the uniform of these encounters. The same ledger in her hands, cloth-covered, old. She looked at the key in his hand. You came with another driver, she said. Daniel Webb. Yes. She looked past him at the lot, toward where Webb's truck was parked out of sight. He shouldn't have been put on this road. He's too new. Whoever made that decision, she stopped herself. Come in. The interior of the dock was empty. No containers, no freight, no workers. Just the dock's concrete floor and the high metal ceiling and the cold that came off the concrete even with the dock light burning. In the center of the floor, placed carefully and deliberately, was a single metal container. Not one of the C-series containers from his trailer. An older container, its surface unpainted and corroded at the edges, sealed with a lock that he recognized, even from across the dock as being the same. Design as the key he held, not 7741, a different number. He could see the stamping as he walked toward it. The first container, before the C-series, before Meridian Road Solutions, before Alderman Holdings. The first container and a lock, and the key in his hand, and a woman watching him with the careful expression of a person who is prepared for this moment for a very long time. Sit down, she said. There was nowhere to sit. She seemed to realize this and did not repeat it. She stood with the ledger open in her hands and looked at him with the directness of someone who had rehearsed what they needed to say and was now simply delivering it. My name is Catherine Voss, she said. I am the 4th person to hold this ledger. It was passed to me by a woman named Ruth Alderman, the granddaughter of Elias. You know the name? I know the name. Elias Alderman discovered something in the Humboldt Range in 1891 that he could not explain. He was a practical man, an engineer, a speculator, a man of the 19th century who believed fundamentally in the ability of human systems to manage whatever they encountered. So he did not destroy what he found. He categorized it. He built a system around it. He used it. She paused. He used it for 3 years before it used him. The road. What he found was not exactly a road. It was more like a network, a set of pathways between certain points. These pathways have existed for a very long time, possibly since before there were roads, before there were people. They run between specific locations, and what moves along them it has needs, requirements, it needs carriers, vehicles capable of moving its cargo between points on the network. Drivers. Alderman built a business around supplying them. He understood that the network would take what it needed regardless. It had been taking carriers for centuries, occasionally, unpredictably, and he reasoned that if he supplied them deliberately, he could control the process, could ensure that the carriers were returned safely, could negotiate a kind of arrangement. She looked at the old container. He was wrong. You cannot negotiate with the network. You can only participate in it or refuse it. The ledgers, the ones I found in Tucson, records of every run Alderman's operation has conducted since 1891. every driver, every route, every cargo. 130 years. She looked at him directly. You are not the 19th driver, Mr. Holt. That is what the calendar told you. Because the calendar's author knows only the modern operation, the last 60 years. You are carrier number 412. The number sat between them in the cold dock air. How many returned? Marcus said. Catherine Voss looked at the ledger. All of them, she said. The network does not kill its carriers. It needs them. It simply marks them, changes them slightly, ensures they will come back. She paused. The drivers who delivered to the Alderman network were not harmed. They were retained. Retained how? You know how, she said quietly. You feel it right now. The road, the pull. The way you know that even if you drive away tonight, you will end up on another. Aldermen run in 6 months or a year or 3 years, because the road knows your name and knows your roots and has written you into its network. That is the mark, not what's painted on your trailer. What's been done to the roads you've traveled? Marcus looked at the key in his hand, at the container on the floor. Zolan leaned. What's in it? He said. The original arrangement, she said. The document Alderman signed in 1891, a ledger that predates all the others. Not a record of drivers, a record of the terms. What the network agreed to in exchange for using human carriers. What it owed. She looked at him steadily. If the terms can be shown to have been broken, if the original arrangement can be produced and interpreted and understood, there is a mechanism for ending the relationship, for releasing the marked carriers, all 412 of them, including me, including you, including Webb if we move quickly enough, and including all the others currently in service, whom you don't know about because you haven't known to look for them. Who else is currently in service? Tonight, 16 active drivers. Same road, different routes, all marked, all unaware of each other's existence. She looked toward the dock door. Webb's cargo is the same as yours. His containers hold copies of the modern ledgers, the post-1960 records, combined with your cargo, the pre-1960 records. The complete record is sufficient to demonstrate the breach. What's the breach? Alderman agreed that the carriers would be released after a single journey. The network agreed, and then it simply didn't. It kept marking. It kept calling them back. For 130 years it has been in violation of its own terms. She looked at him. All we need is to demonstrate that with complete documentation, which is why they've been keeping the ledger records moving. A moving record is harder to read in full. You had to stop them, which is what you did in Tucson, and they reconstituted the cargo and sent it again. So tonight you open the original. Tonight you and Webb bring the complete set of records together, and I read the breach into the ledger that I hold, which has been prepared for exactly this. She held up her cloth-covered book. And we find out whether the network honors its own terms. Marcus looked at the container, at the key, at the number. What if it doesn't honor them? He said. Catherine Voss was quiet for a moment. Then we will have tried, she said, and we will know precisely what we are dealing with. He went and got Webb first. He walked to the south side of the building and knocked on the Freightliner's cab door and told Webb concisely what Catherine Voss had said. He watched Webb's face as he talked, watched the young man process it, question it, look for the exit from what he was being told and find none, then accept it with the particular solidity of someone who has been carrying a weight for hours without knowing its shape, and has just been shown the shape. 412 drivers, Webb said. Yes, and I'm one of them now, because of tonight. If we do this correctly, no. They went back in together. Catherine Voss looked at Webb with an expression that mixed calculation and apology in equal measure. Your containers, she said, they need to be brought to the dock. The forklift in the corner of the dock started on its own. Neither of them touched it. It drove itself to the dock door with the careful efficiency of a machine that knew exactly what it was doing. And the dock door opened, and the forklift went out into the lot and came back 10 minutes later with Webb's containers, 4 of them, stacked precisely beside the old container. 001 Marcus's containers came next. The forklift made no error. It placed all 8 containers, 4 from each truck, in a precise arrangement that Marcus recognized with a chill that was separate from the building's cold as the same layout as the marks on his trailer. The circle and line pattern expressed in 3 dimensions. Catherine Voss opened the cloth ledger she carried and laid it on the container nearest to her. She wrote something, quickly, in the same red ink that Marcus recognized from the calendar. She looked up. "Key," she said. He walked to container 001 and inserted the key and turned it, the oldest document he had ever seen. Not paper, something older than paper, something that had the texture of very old leather but the substance of neither leather nor paper, dark brown, supple despite its evident age, covered in handwriting in what he recognized was not English, not any language he could identify from its character set, dense and precise, filling every available surface of every page of what was a book, approximately the size and shape of the cloth ledgers, but assembled with materials that had nothing to do with printing or manufacture. Below it, in the container, a single modern document, a transcription, typewritten on standard paper in English. He picked up the transcription. The first line read, "Terms of the Humboldt Arrangement, as transcribed and translated from the original by R. Alderman, October 1891. He read it. It was 12 pages. It described, in the careful, dry language of a legal agreement, the terms under which the network, described throughout as the carrier of the unmoving load, would use human drivers. The terms were specific. 1 journey, 1 marking, release upon completion of delivery, no further obligation. The 12th page had a blank space at the bottom, a signature space. Elias Alderman's signature was there, in faded brown ink. Above it, where the second signature should have been, was a mark, the circle and line, larger and more complex than the version painted on his trailer, but unmistakably the same origin. The network had signed, and then had not honored the signature. Catherine Voss read the breach into her ledger. She spoke in a low, formal voice, citing page numbers and clause numbers and dates, building the case with the precision of a lawyer filing a motion. Webb stood beside Marcus and watched her, and neither of them spoke. When she finished, she closed the ledger. She looked at Marcus. "Now we wait," she said. "For what?" "For an answer." It came in the form of the container marks. The marks on his trailer, the circle and line covering every panel, changed, not disappeared, changed, rearranged themselves. The elements of the symbol shifting and reconfiguring, the circles opening and the lines reorganizing, until what was on the trailer was no longer the mark he had been carrying, but something else. Something that Catherine Voss, looking through the dark small window at the trailer, read aloud from her ledger, with the expression of a person who has been waiting for a very long time and has finally received a letter. "Acknowledged," she said. "The breach is acknowledged. The terms are invoked." The old container 001 closed itself. The key turned in his hand without his turning it, and the lock engaged. "What does acknowledge mean?" Webb said. "It means the network accepts the claim," Catherine Voss said. "It means the marking is subject to review. It means," she paused, looking at her ledger, "it means that 412 drivers are in a state of conditional release. Pending the completion of tonight's delivery, the delivery to this dock, which you have completed, they are no longer obligated." "Including me?" Webb said. "You were only marked tonight. The marking has not had time to settle. For you, yes, immediately. And Holt?" She looked at Marcus. "Your marking is older, deeper, 19 years. She looked at the ledger. "It is acknowledged, but the release it is not instantaneous. You are on the road, Mr. Holt. You will remain on the road, but the road will no longer own the travel. Do you understand the difference?" He did. He had understood it even before she said it. The road does not stop existing because you are no longer obligated to it. It does not become less dark, less strange, less populated with things at the edges of headlights. It remains what it is, but you move through it differently when you are moving through it as yourself rather than as something it has claimed. What about the other 16 active drivers? He said. The release will reach them through the network, she said. In the same way the marking reached them. It will take time. Some of them may not understand what has changed. Some may continue to drive alderman routes for years, not knowing they are no longer required to. She looked at him. That is why the calendar's author asked you to carry this, so that someone on the road would know, so that someone who understood could recognize the other marked drivers when they encountered them and tell them, "The man who called me," Marcus said, "the one who put the calendar in my truck." Catherine Voss looked at the old container 001 for a moment. "He is the 20th driver," she said. "He has been trying to end the arrangement for a long time. He knows these roads better than anyone alive. He has been on them since before you started driving." She paused. "He asked me to tell you that tonight he felt the marking change. He wanted you to know that it worked." Marcus stood in the cold dock and felt the particular quality of a moment that ends something that has been going on for a long time. Not loud, not dramatic, not what the movies had taught him to expect from a revelation. Just a shift, a settling, like a weight redistributed, like a truck finding its balance on a new grade. "What happens now?" Webb said. Marcus looked at the door. At the lot outside where his truck was parked, where the calendar sat on the passenger seat, at the road that began at the warehouse gate and ran in every direction from there. "Now we drive home," he said. He took I-84 west, the same road he had come in on, and it was the most ordinary drive he had had in months. Webb drove his own route south back towards Salt Lake, and they said goodbye on the CB with the particular brevity of two people who had been through something together and know that the full meaning of it will take time to understand. The Oregon night was clear. The canyon was just a canyon. The mountains were mountains. The road was a road. He stopped at a rest area east of Portland at dawn and sat with his coffee and the calendar and watched the light come up over the gorge, the slow pinking of the sky, the river appearing below as the darkness receded, the exact quality of light at that hour in that place that he had never seen before because he had always driven through it without stopping. He opened the calendar. November 18th, the day after delivery. It read, "After this, you will know enough to be dangerous to them. After this, they will know you know." This is not a warning. It is a preparation. He had read that already, but below it, in writing that had not been there before, "The third journey is complete. There will be a fourth. The fourth will be different from the others. You will choose it rather than be given it. When you are ready, the road will show you where to go. Take the calendar. The road still needs a witness." He looked at the calendar for a long time, at the blank remaining pages. November 19th through December 1st, all empty, all waiting. The road still needs a witness, not a carrier, a witness. He turned to a blank page. For the first time since finding the calendar, he took a pen from the cup holder and wrote on it. Not a red pen, a plain black ballpoint, the kind in every truck stop and diner in America. He wrote carefully, in his own handwriting, on the blank November 19th. Marcus Holt, truck driver, 19 years. The road marked me and I marked back. If you find this calendar, it means the road knows your name too. That is not the end. That is the beginning. Stay on the road. Pay attention. The road is dark, but you are not alone in the dark. He closed the calendar. He started the engine. He drove west into the morning light, toward home. He called Denise when he crossed back into Nevada. Mid-morning, the sun high and the desert bright and properly warm in the way that Nevada can be warm even in November, when the conditions are right. "Delivery done?" she asked. "Done. Overnight as requested. Any issues on the route?" He thought about the Emmett Spur, the fog faces, the dark Kenworth, the canyon resonance, the container 001 and its leather and not leather pages, the forklift that drove itself, the network acknowledging 412 years of debt. Road conditions were fine, he said. "Good. Got another load when you're ready. Nothing urgent. Few days off first if you need it." "What load?" "Out of Salt Lake, industrial freight. New client, good rate." She paused. No night-only specification this time, which is a nice change. Standard daytime run, straight highway. You interested? He looked at the road ahead, at the calendar on the passenger seat, at the blank pages waiting. Send me the manifest, he said. He had been home in Reno for one day when his phone rang with the number that had called him in Nevada on the first night of the third journey. The voice was the same, middle-aged, careful, choosing every word. It held, the man said without greeting. I felt the acknowledgement last night. I've been on the road for 31 years. Last night was the first time in 31 years that I drove a stretch of highway and felt nothing, just road, just asphalt and distance. A pause. I didn't know how heavy the marking was until it was gone. Who are you? Marcus said. My name is James Holt, the man said. I am your father's younger brother. I started driving trucks when I was 22. Your father told you I disappeared when you were a child. I didn't disappear. I was on the road. I couldn't stop being on the road. The marking wouldn't let me. Marcus sat in his kitchen in Reno and held the phone and did not speak for a moment. You put the calendar in my truck, he said. I put it there the third time you drove an Alderman run, the man said. I watched you for years. I waited until you were experienced enough. Until you had driven enough of the network that you could navigate it effectively. I waited until the moment was right. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you got marked at all. The marking reaches. It reaches family. I didn't know that until you were already on your first run. The woman in Tucson, Marcus said. She said you know the roads better than anyone alive. 31 years, the man said. I know every road the network uses. Every stop, every figure, every detour. I know Alderman's Pass and the Emmett Spur and the canyon where the engine dies. I know all of it. Then help me find the other drivers, Marcus said. The ones still running who don't know they've been released. A long silence. There are 16 active carriers, the man said. I know their routes. I know their runs. Another pause. And in it Marcus heard something he recognized. The sound of a man who has been carrying something, alone for a very long time and has just been offered company. When do you want to start? Marcus looked at the calendar, at the blank pages, at the black pen on the table beside it. Tomorrow night, he said. Send me a route. The route arrived as a text message, coordinates, highway numbers, a sequence of points across 5 states that, when he plotted them on his road atlas, formed a pattern he recognized, not the random scatter of logistics, a deliberate shape, a circuit returning to its origin, designed to intersect with the routes of the 16 active carriers in the most efficient sequence. A road trip, in the original sense, a trip that was about the road rather than the destination. A drive whose purpose was the driving. He packed for a week. He loaded supplies in the cooler, the real supplies, the kind for a long run. Good food this time, not truck stop sandwiches, because he was choosing this road, and that made a difference. He checked the truck thoroughly, top to bottom. The way you check a vehicle when you respect it and know you're about to ask it for something significant. He put the calendar on the passenger seat. He put the key 7741 in the glove box. He was not sure it would be needed again, but he had learned not to leave behind things that had chosen to stay with him. He called his daughter in Portland. She answered on the second ring, in the middle of something that sounded like a lab session, her voice bright and distracted and perfectly, beautifully ordinary. Hey Dad, good timing, I'm just between experiments. Everything okay? Everything's good, he said. I'm going to be on the road for a while. Long run. Okay, call me when you stop. Every night, he said. Promise. He started the engine. He pulled out of the apartment lot and turned north on the street and picked up the on-ramp for I-80 East. And the Nevada morning was clear and cold and entirely without mystery, which was exactly right. The road opened ahead of him. He drove. He found the first of the 16 active carriers in Wyoming on US 30 east of Rock Springs at 11 p.m. on the first night of the circuit. A woman named Sandra Okafor, 48, from Denver, 18 years on the road, one of the steadiest safety records in her regional carrier's history. He had her plate number and approximate location from James, and he pulled alongside her on the wide, empty Wyoming highway and flashed his lights. 3 times, the universal signal between drivers that something needed to be communicated. She pulled over. He pulled over. He walked to her cab and she rolled down the window. "My name is Marcus Holt," he said. "Truck driver. Out of Reno. I need to talk to you about the alderman contracts you've been running." Her face changed. The careful, neutral, professional expression of a long-haul driver at 11 p.m., slightly guarded, slightly tired, entirely self-contained, cracked around the edges. "The what?" she said, but her voice said she knew. "You've been driving night runs," he said. "Industrial freight, sealed containers, routes that sometimes take you places that don't make sense, places that shouldn't be where they are, figures on the road at night, things in the mirrors." He looked at her steadily. "I know because I've been doing it for 19 years, and I need to tell you that you don't have to anymore." Sandra Okafor sat in the cab of her truck on a Wyoming highway at 11 p.m. and said nothing for a long moment. And then she said in a voice that was very quiet, "The radio, it says my name between songs." "I know," Marcus said. "It stops. Starting last night, it stops." She looked at him. She was looking for the lie, the catch, the reason not to believe this. He let her look. He had had the same look on his own face when Catherine Voss had talked in the Boise warehouse, and he knew the only thing that resolved it was time and the recognition that the person speaking to you had been where you were and was still standing. "How do I know?" she said. "Drive a run tonight," he said. "Drive it the way you used to drive before you knew. With the windows down, with the radio up, looking at the road the way roads are supposed to be looked at. And when nothing comes out of the dark, when the road is just a road, you'll know." She looked at the highway ahead of her. Then she rolled her window up and drove. He went back to his truck and pulled out, following at a distance, and drove with her for 30 miles until she found her own rhythm again, her own speed, the headlights showing just a highway and nothing else. Then he turned off onto a county road and left her to her night, which was now simply her night. 15 more to go. He found them in order. A 62-year-old man named Roy, Ashworth on I-15 in Montana, who had been running alderman routes for 25 years, and who, when Marcus told him, simply sat and wept for a minute and a half with the controlled, private grief of a man who has been holding something for 2 long a pair of drivers, husband and wife, Robert and Alice Huang, who were running a joint operation out of Salt Lake and had been marked on their first run together 8 years ago and had not understood why their routes kept circling back to the same impossible roads. A young woman from Albuquerque, barely 21, who had been on her 3rd run ever when the marking found her, and who, when Marcus explained it, went very pale and very determined and said simply, "How do I make sure it never happens to anyone else?" He told her about the calendar, about writing in it, about the blank pages. He told her that the road still needed witnesses and that a witness was different from a carrier. A witness chose the road, moved through it with open eyes, carried the knowledge forward to the next driver who needed it. She took down his number. She said she would think about it. He drove on. He found a 70-year-old man in Nebraska who had been running alderman loads since the 1970s and who had built an entire second life around the network. A wife who knew something was wrong but not what. Children raised on money that came from routes he could not explain. A half-century of roads that had taken something from him in increments so small he had not noticed. The total cost until Marcus sat across from him in a truck stop diner and laid it out. "I was 40 years younger than you are now when it started," the old man said. "I know," Marcus said. "All those roads." He looked at his coffee. "I thought I chose them." "You did choose them," Marcus said. "The network didn't move your hands. It just made sure you kept coming back." He paused. "The roads are still there. The drives you made, those were yours. What you saw, what you know about this country at night from a cab window, no one can take that. The network was using you, but the roads were real." The old man looked at him for a long time. "You believe that?" he said. "I believe it," Marcus said. "I've got 19 years of my own road. I'm keeping all of it." He met his uncle for the first time in his memory at a truck stop outside Cheyenne, Wyoming, on the 5th day of the circuit. James Holt was 63 years old, which Marcus had known intellectually but had not prepared for emotionally. He had a boy's mental image of his father's younger brother, assembled from photographs and family stories. A young man frozen at 22. The person who got out of a Kenworth, dark, no plates, which Marcus recognized immediately, was someone else. Older, leaner, with the eyes of a man who had driven the dark roads for 31 years and had come out the other side of them. He had his father's jaw. Marcus saw it immediately. They shook hands. They went inside. They drank coffee. They talked for 4 hours in a back booth in Wyoming while the November evening became a November night, and the trucks came and went in. The lot outside, ordinary drivers on ordinary roads. James told him what the first decade had been like, the wonder of it, the road opening up in ways it did not for other drivers, the sense of being special and chosen and necessary. He told him what the second decade had been like, the dawning understanding, the fear, the attempts to stop, the way the marking brought him back. He told him what the third decade had been like, the research, the discovery of the arrangement, the contacting of Catherine Voss's predecessor, the long work of assembling a mechanism to invoke the terms. "Why did it take so long?" Marcus asked. "I needed a driver who was marked deeply enough to be visible to the network, but not so long that the marking was unresolvable," James said. "And I needed someone who would do the unexpected. Most drivers, when they find the calendar, use it to navigate. They use it to stay safe. They don't think of it as evidence or as a tool." He looked at his coffee. "I watched 30 years of drivers use it to survive. I needed one who would use it to fight." "How did you know I would?" James smiled, briefly the first time, the family jaw flexing. "Because I watched you load for your first alderman run," he said. "You were 22. Before you pulled out of the lot, you walked the entire truck, checked every seal, tried every door. You wanted to know exactly what you were carrying." He paused. "I knew then that when you found out what you were actually carrying, you would not accept it." Marcus looked at him across the table. The uncle who had been on the road for 31 years, who had put a calendar in a nephew's truck, who had felt the marking change 2 nights ago and had called to say he felt the road, for the first time in decades, as just a road. "Are you done?" Marcus said. "Are you off it now?" "The marking is released," James said. But he paused. He looked at the window, at the lot outside, at the dark interstate beyond the lot. "I know every road on the network. I've been driving them for 31 years. He looked back at Marcus. "The knowledge doesn't go away when the obligation does." "No," Marcus said, "it doesn't." 16 carriers, James said. "You're finding them. 11 down. 5 left." James looked at the calendar that Marcus had put on the table, at the pages covered now with black, ballpoint handwriting, the stories of 11 drivers, the routes and the markings and the releases, a new kind of record, not a ledger of obligation, a record of freedom. "I'll take the last 5, James said. "I know their routes better than you do." Marcus looked at him, at his father's jaw on his father's brother's face, at 31 years of road in a man's eyes. "We'll split them," Marcus said. "I'll take 3, you take 2. We finish by the weekend." James put out his hand. Marcus shook it. They split the check and went back to their trucks and drove. And the Wyoming night was simply the Wyoming night, cold and clear and full of stars. And the road went in both directions, and neither of them was required to take it, but both of them did, because that was who they were. He took I-25 south and found the 12th carrier in Colorado, a young man named Felix Orozco, 26, who had been marked 8 months ago on his second alderman run and who had spent 8 months telling himself that the things he saw on night roads were the product of sleep deprivation and not anything he needed to take seriously. He had told himself this so successfully that when Marcus sat down across from him and described, in precise detail, the fog with faces in it and the figures on Alderman's Pass and the knocking from inside sealed trailers. Felix Orozco's expression was not surprise. It was relief, the specific, physical relief of a person who has been carrying the knowledge that they are not crazy alone for a very long time. He found the 13th in Texas, a woman in her 50s, running a refrigerated freight operation who had been on alderman runs so long that she had developed an elaborate personal mythology around them, a set of explanations and superstitions that had allowed her to continue functioning. Marcus sat with her for 2 hours and did not try to dismantle the mythology, just told her the factual architecture underneath it, what the network was, what the marking was, what the arrangement said, and how it had been invoked. She listened with the attention of someone updating a map. "So it's over," she said. "The obligation is over," he said. "The roads are still the roads." She nodded slowly. "I know those roads," she said. 30 years. "I'm not going to stop driving them." "No," he said. "Neither am I." He found the 14th in Mississippi, an old man, nearly 80, who had been on the Alderman network since the 1960s, who had outlasted every expectation the network might have had for him, who had simply kept driving, year after year, decade after decade. One of the longest-running carriers in the Ledger's history. He lived in a small house outside of Jackson and still drove 3 times a week and had no intention of stopping. "Young man," he said to Marcus from his porch. When Marcus had finished explaining, "I drove my first night run in 1963. I have driven at night every year since. I have seen things on those roads that I will never forget as long as I am breathing." He looked at the calendar, at Marcus. "You're telling me I was marked?" "Yes, sir." "That it kept calling me back?" "Yes, sir." He was quiet for a moment. "I was going to keep calling it back anyway," he said. "Road like that, you don't forget it. You don't stop going back to it." He looked at Marcus steadily. "I don't need a release from a road I chose." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "No, sir," he said. "You don't." James took the last 2. He called Marcus on the evening of the 7th day to confirm. Both found, both told, both understood. The circuit was complete. All 16 active carriers had been reached. He was back in Nevada by the last week of November, driving south on 93, the road he had started all of this on, the familiar corridor of sage and rock and the particular Nevada sky that he had been looking at from a truck cab for 19 years. He was heading home. He had been on the road for 12 days since Boise. The calendar was open on the passenger seat, filled now, half the remaining blank pages covered in his own handwriting and James's, and the names and routes of 16 marked drivers now released. A different kind of record than the Alderman ledgers, a record that went in the other direction. Not what the road had taken, what had been returned to it, what had chosen to stay. He passed the turnoff for Route 93 East, where the roadwork detour had been 11 weeks ago, where his first extraordinary night had started. The detour signs were gone. The highway was open. He drove straight through without detour. He passed the approximate location of the Bitter Creek Junction truck stop, where a girl had warned him about Alderman's Pass, where a pot of fresh coffee had been waiting. He stopped and looked out the window. The truck stop was not there. The gravel lot was empty, had clearly been empty for a long time. The asphalt crumbled at the edges, a rusted fuel pump leaning at an angle. No one had straightened in years. Closed. Had been closed for some time. He drove on. He opened the calendar to November 29th, the current date. The remaining blank pages. The entry for today read, in handwriting that he recognized as neither his own nor the familiar red of the previous author, but something in between, something that could have been either. The road is not done with witnesses. The 4th journey will be chosen, as I said. When you are ready, you will know the direction. Not north, not south, not east, not west. The direction the road needs is inward. Someone has to drive the parts of the network that no carrier has mapped, where the original arrangement came from, before Elias Alderman named it and built his business around it. Someone has to witness the road at its source. You will need the key, 7741. It opens more than one thing. When you are ready. He read it twice. Then he looked at the road ahead. Ordinary, clear southbound Nevada highway in the late November afternoon, and thought about what ready meant. He had driven this road for 19 years without understanding what it was. He had driven it for 11 weeks, now with the calendar in the cab and the marking on the trailer and the weight of other drivers' roads on his conscience. He had spent 12 days finding people who did not know they were free and telling them they were free and watching their faces. When the knowledge settled, he thought he might know what ready felt like. He thought he might be getting there. He closed the calendar. He put his hand in the glove box and felt the key. 7741, brass stamped, real. He left it there. Not yet. He drove south. The November light was long and copper on the mountains. The road was his. He got home to Reno at sunset. He parked the truck in its spot in the lot. He sat for a moment after cutting the engine, in the particular silence of a cab after many hours of engine noise, the silence that has texture and dimension in it, that is not empty. He called his daughter. She answered on the second ring. "Dad, you're home?" "Just got in," he said. "Good. I was starting to—" "Never mind." The sound of her relieved exhale. "Good. How was the road?" He looked at the calendar on the passenger seat, at the key in the glove box, at the darkness gathering beyond the lot's lights, which was just Nevada evening, just the ordinary dark. "Long," he said. "Good. Complicated in the middle. Straightened out at the end." She laughed, the quick, clear laugh she had had since she was a child. "That's every road, Dad." "Every road," he agreed. They talked for 20 minutes. He went upstairs. He made dinner, a real dinner, something that required cutting and heat and time, an act of normalcy that he had been neglecting for weeks. He ate at the table. He read the newspaper. He washed the dishes. At 10 p.m. he went to bed and lay in the dark and thought about the fourth journey, about the direction inward, about the parts of the network no carrier had ever mapped,